I'm going to talk about something from last week's parsha with your permission, because you heard this on Shabbos, but I want everybody in internet land to hear this also. Do you go over the Targum on the parsha yet? Did they tell you that you have to yet? We learned this in high school. Rabbi Yitzchak Cohen used to say you have to be. It sounded like to say Marbish Sedra. You said Maver Sedra. Mahavir Sidra, which means review the Sidra, which is the weekly parsha, at least in the annual cycle. So that review, according to the usual halachic sources, is you have to read the text twice and the Targum once. And Targum is Okulus. And the Shulchan Aruch mentions, okay, Rashi after the fact. You get away with it, but there's not Rashi. Rashi is not on every pasuk on the Torah. As a matter of fact, Rashi sometimes disagrees with Okulus. And a lot of times Rashi just says Kitargumo. And people are thinking, okay, what does the Targum say, right? And they don't look up what the Targum says, right? So you should look up the Targum for what you study. I think it's very important, even as a youngster. Read the Parsha twice, read Okulus once, know what he's talking about. And what's the pasuk over there? And I asked everybody Shabbos evening, Parshas Devarim, where is Rafah mentioned? Rafah is the modern Hebrew and Old Hebrew for what's called in Arabic in the Western media Rafah. Okay, isn't that in this week's parsha or last week's parsha? And the answer is yes. Moshe Rabbeinu mentions the place in passing, except he mentions it by its older Hebrew name, Hatzerim. Now, by the way, the other Mefarshim, I was surprised. The Das Mikra doesn't mention this, but then I looked at Das Mikra. I really like Das Mikra Tehillim. I've had it here since I made Aliyah. It's the first Das Mikra I got. I got it in English. It was a gift from someone to my wife. I didn't really use the English one. It was the first Das Mikra I bought when I moved to Israel. And then I have, the second volume. It's very good. It's written by Amos Chacham, who we've talked about in the past. But there are other volumes. So I really like their Bamidbar. It was written by a fellow, I think, Mursky or Moskowitz. One is Mursky, one's Moskowitz, other scholars. Yehuda Kill wrote a few of them. Bamidbar and Devarim in the Das Mikra are very different books. You could tell they're totally different. So I really like their Bamidbar. And the Devarim, look, he did a good job, but it's not my favorite. And unlike the other books of Das Mikra, he happens to, when he mentions, Moshe Rabbeinu says, these Avim who lived from Hatzerim to Gaza, which is until Gaza, were chased away by the Caphtorim, who took over their country. Okay? Now, who are the Avim? Where is Hatzerim? I know where Gaza is. Gaza is one of the most global places in the land of Israel. And who are the Caphtorim? So Onkelos fills it in. Hatzerim is Rafah. Gaza is Gaza. Caphtorim are the Cappadocians. Right? Remember the Cappadocians? Well, okay, well, the ancient people lived in what is nowadays Turkey. But then again, Turkey is a hard place. Turkey encompasses a lot of ancient lands. Okay? When they talk about, for example, Queen Helene, right, Helene Yamalka, she was not queen of the Jews. She was Jewish, but not queen of Jews. She was the queen of Adyabin, a Hellenic kingdom in what is today Turkey. Okay? Her husband was king, and then her son was king after him, and she made Aliyah. She converted to Judaism. So when she's mentioned as being around Jerusalem, she wasn't a queen who ruled in Jerusalem or the wife of a queen of a king in Jerusalem. The king at the time was Agrippus, and he had a different wife altogether. She just happened to live there. There's some wealthy, like a lot of wealthy Americans live in Jerusalem nowadays, even though they're not native born. They don't have political power. So the Awim, according to Onkelos there, are just, he doesn't translate who it is. Rashi says the Awim were a Plishti subgroup, sub-tribe within the Plishtim. And Ramban, if I'm not mistaken, others say the Awim were actually take out the ayin, add a fat, you have the Hivites, Kanani subgroup. Okay, so it's a machlokas, Rashi and Ramban how to understand this. By the way, Onkelos tells you that the Caphtorim are the Cappadocians, or some Cappadocians, and Hatzerim, which is not a standard plural for the word Hatzerot. So they turned it from, feminine to masculine. Then again, we have Kfarim, graves in the Beit HaKfarot, right? It's kind of weird. There's other examples like that in Hebrew. Is it Kfarim or Kfarot? Why is it that you have? Okay, there's other examples like that. So this place called Hatzerim was what used to be called Rafah. So Rashi says that the point of the pasuk is telling you that once upon a time there was a Plishti group that lived there, but Avram Avinu swore to the king of the Plishtim, Avimelech, that it would be a non-aggression pact. So in Moshe Rabbeinu's time, the lands of the Plishti, or their cities, were off limits to Jewish conquest. However, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them that the area from Caphtorim to Gaza, basically from Rafah to Gaza City, is not populated anymore by these Plishti Avim people. The Caphtorim took over, or some Caphtorim took over. Now the place is populated Cappadocians. And even though they're not Canaanites, you have no problem fighting against them. So if you want, you can go march into Rafah in Gaza and take over the place. That's what Rashi says on last week's parsha. Quite relevant, you know. Besides, not every rabbi made this his Rasha, because if you just read Rashi, you don't know it's Rafah unless you read Onkelos, and you don't know that's the point unless you read Rashi. And Ramban says, no, they're not Philistines living there. They're Canaanites. The Avim are Hivites, one of the 7 Canaanite nations. So Moshe Rabbeinu is telling you that even though there's a Canaanite mainland, and then there's this Gaza Strip where the Plishtim live, and you can't touch the Plishtim, the Avim area from Rafah to Gaza is actually is in play because you have to conquer it. More than Rashi. Rashi says it's permissible to conquer the place. Ramban is saying you have to.
What does Ramban get that you switch out the iron?
There's a few examples like that. They're very close letters. It's like switching ayin is to chet as aleph is to hey. And those two switch all the time. To do a Punnett square. What? What?
Where do you have aleph in this?
Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha. How's it spelled? Ana. You're wrong. Sorry. You try. Aleph Nun Hey. Hey, wait, it's spelled with the Hey. Okay? Elohei Avim Nikra Aleinu. Moshe Rabbeinu can't decide in Parsha Shmos. Is it Nikra with a Hey or with an Aleph? It switches around. In Rabbinic Hebrew, they don't actually. Isn't that funny? And Onkelos also. We had a share about this like a year and a half ago. Of all these, for Hebrew purists, there's a difference between the Shorish P Lamed Aleph and P Lamed Hey. Kuf Resh Aleph and Kuf Resh Hey. And other examples like that. But in some biblical sources and a lot of rabbinic sources, they're basically the same. That's why Chazal say Matzinu instead of Matzanu. Kiryat Shema instead of Karinu instead of Karanu. Okay? So there's a few of those. So Hiflinu, there are those who say Hiflinu from the word Pei Lamed Hey, some say Pei Lamed Aleph. Depends on your understanding. Where were we saying? Okay, so Rafah was last week's parsha, right? Oh, good. So you're supposed to, what does it teach you in last week's parsha? You're not supposed to leave these places. If there was a political discussion where you said, Bibi says it's not realistic, but the Jewish people say we're required to do so. And by the way, Ma'asevot Siman Levanim, that which inspired to and happened to the forefathers is a sign for the rest of us, right? The more things change, the more things stay the same. History is repeating itself, and the test is still in front of us.